Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson on descriptive writing. I hope you've all seen the, I think, rather cute cover image of me as a sloth, which I made for today. I'm rather pleased with it. Welcome to everybody in the comments. There have been loads of people asking for shout outs. I'm just going to scroll through a few of them quickly, but I'm not going to spend more than a few seconds on this. Yes, Strawberry Clouds again. Hello, Yatharth, Devi, Ria, Mariam, Haroon. Haroon, please tell me you found the worksheet by now. You said you'd found the page saying, welcome everybody, and then you said, but where's the worksheet? That's the first page of the worksheet. Anybody else who's puzzled about worksheets? Right, allow me to explain. The worksheet is linked in the video description. That means there's a bit underneath this video on your computer. If you're on a phone or a tablet, you might just click a little arrow and it appears. And there's a link there that says the worksheet for today's lesson is easy11plus.org/something/number 46. And you click on it and the worksheet comes up and then you just scroll down a bit and there's a print button. And that's it, you print the thing. Don't do it now, you're watching the video already. But that's where you get the worksheet, okay? So you can try the task out after the lesson, during the lesson, before the lesson, whenever, okay? The worksheet that I refer to so often. I really recommend that when you get the chance, you do print the worksheet and have a go before the lesson. The shout outs here, Varsana, Rajkumar, Haroon. God, so many messages from Haroon. Oh, I hope you found it now. Yeah, I thought I've said. So many people posting the same comments. 11 Plus Master. What are you doing here? You're already an 11 Plus Master. You don't need to watch this. Ransom Kayam. Oh, Science Stalker. What a username. My name is Vishak. Can I get a shout out? Here is your shout out. Okay, that'll have to do for the moment because it's so many messages. We've got a lesson to cover, folks. If you find my ramblings on about the 11 Plus useful, then please tell your friends, invite them along to the Easy 11 Plus YouTube channel. Right, let's plunge in and have a look at the task that is, yes, in the worksheet, the famous worksheet. And here is the crucial bit of the task. So you've got a picture here. Write a short descriptive passage of 1 or 2 paragraphs closely based on the following photograph of a resting two-toed sloth. And I've said, look at the front feet, because I know there's going to be somebody who looks at the foot up there and says, but there are 3 toes. But look at the front foot next to it, which has 2, okay? And if you compare pictures of 2-toed and 3-toed sloths, or sloths, as some people say, I'm not sure which is better, you will see that actually it's not just the number of toes, that actually the 2-toed and 3-toed sloths are rather radically different looking animals, in my opinion. But I think they're wonderful. I love them, and when I go to a zoo where there are sloths, I think they're the most wonderful animals. And even though they don't do a huge amount, I could just watch them for ages. I'm old and boring like that. Okay, writing space follows on the next page. As a rough guide, aim to fill half to 2/3 of the page. More or less what you might cover if you had 10 to 15 minutes in an exam. So this is not a long descriptive task. This is not one of these things where you get 40 minutes. It's a shorter task where you have to write something a bit more compact. I thought that was more suitable for this lesson because that means we can together produce a complete piece of writing. Okay. Super. So, things we might want to think about here. When you've got a task like this, it is testing your ability to write descriptively. In other words, to write well about what's in that picture and ideas closely associated with it. It is not challenging you to come up with a complex story narrative, okay? And in fact, if you do that, you'll probably do disastrously poorly. Because you'll be squeezing in lots of events, this and this and this and this and this, and you're not going to be pulling details from the picture and describing beautifully in the time and space that you have available. So you need the simplest structure, really, a really simple structure, just describing what's there. However, if you just say what is in the picture at this moment, equally, you are liable to run out of ideas. There is a sloth. It is holding onto a branch. There are some leaves in front of it. The tree trunks are mottled with lichen. You see what I mean? Whoa, it's so dull, okay? So we need some ideas to give us a little bit of narrative structure, a little bit of direction so that you aren't just listing things, okay? There are 2 really bad kinds of lists in a description. So Bomi says, hi, Sir Robert Stupendous Lomax, sorry for being late. If you address me so magnificently, you never need to apologise for anything. kinds of lists we need to avoid. One is the this happened, then this, then this, then this narrative list. The other is the no narrative at all. I see this, I see this, I see this, I see this, I see this list. Okay, those kinds of lists are both bad. What you need is a really, really simple structure that nevertheless does give you a little bit of structure. Okay? There are different ways that you might find such a structure. I'm not going to list all of them, but just some thoughts. So one thing you can do is you can, for example, start by zooming in on a specific detail in the image and then kind of pan out. So you start to see, maybe you just describe the nostrils and then you pan out to the face, then the whole sloth, then the background, and then maybe even you pan out a bit beyond the picture and give a bit of the broader context. Maybe you do the opposite. You start with a bit of context and zoom in on the sloth. However, be careful with that because you should be starting with details from the picture to show that you're responding to the task, not with something else. So I think it might be better to start in the detail than pull back. So those are simple kinds of narrative. Another kind of narrative might start with something like the bark of the tree, then move up the sloth's leg to its face. You might actually move through the picture with a particular kind of direction that gives you purpose and links your ideas. Things that I really like include having a little bit of time progression. Now, I do not mean a big story that goes through time. What I do mean is, for example, you start your description just before dawn, and you describe the period as it's becoming light and how the things in the picture change. You don't go away and describe the sun rising, that isn't in the picture. What you do describe is the way that, for example, the colours of the sloth and the sounds around the sloth change as the sun comes up. And that will give you a bit of direction, a bit of purpose as you describe in this picture. Okay, so various ideas like that. You need to find a really simple, oh so simple idea just to give you a little bit of direction, but then the focus of everything you write about within that structure is going to be coming from details in the picture. So the other crucial thing, find details in the picture and keep coming back to them. Okay, the more detailed, the better you will write. Last thing I'm going to say is 11 plus master writes. So are we writing a passage about the sloth? I feel this sloth looks considerably more perceptive than some people are being in the comments today. Of course we're writing a passage about a sloth. What do you think we're doing? Why do you think there's a picture of one on the screen? Have you looked at the worksheet, boy? Or lass, I think it's boy. Okay, anyway. Yeah. And the thing that's going to give you so many ideas is simply concentrating on the 5 senses, okay? Look at my lesson from, I don't know, a few months ago about using the 5 senses really creatively. I think it's the one where I'm doing this extravagant pose with the scarf on the video cover. And I talk about how you can be imaginative and surprising with the ideas that you choose. So have a look at that as well. Okay, enough. Let us plunge in and have a go at this. But how do we start? Is this an I story? Are you going to be the sloth? Are you going to be a person wandering through the forest and finding it? Both of these are possible, but they can both be a little bit complex for different reasons. If you imagine yourself as another character looking at the sloth, the time you spend telling the reader about your character and where they are and why they're looking from a particular point and what they're doing there is time wasted when you're not describing the photo. So for a really short task like this, that's a bit dangerous. Using a first-person I narrative, so being the sloth, is also a little bit dangerous. Big one. Because there are various things that the sloth will not be aware of. It will not know how it looks because presumably it doesn't have a little makeup mirror. Okay, so if you say my fur was starting to look, the fur on my face was starting to look bedraggled, you can't say that, okay? If you describe what you sound like, would you really notice that if you were the sloth? Do you see what I mean? If you're writing an I first person narrative, you have to be really careful about your perspective, so it might be best avoided. The easiest perspective for a story like this is what you can simply call the God perspective. In other words, you can see everything. You can also know what the sloth is feeling and thinking if you want to. You don't have any particular limitation. And that's probably the most useful point of view for something like this. Let's have a go at doing it. So I'm going to use the God perspective and I'm going to give this a little bit of a time progression. Now, I said you could start just before dawn and the sun comes up, or you could have late afternoon and it's starting to go into evening. I'm going to describe this as though, well, what clues are there in the image? Let's make it a bit bigger again. We can see that the sloth's fur is wet, okay? And it's up in a tree, so probably it hasn't just been swimming. They can swim, but if it had just been swimming, it would have climbed up so slowly, it would probably be looking quite dry by now. So I reckon there's rain involved. Actually, if you look at the way that the fur lies on the sloth, it's amazing how the fur is arranged to slough off all the water so it doesn't go in and make the animal cold. Really amazing. Anyway, so I'm going to imagine that this starts off, no, you don't want to see me, that's far too ugly, let's see the sloth, that's it. I'm going to imagine that this starts before a rainstorm and then the rainstorm comes, and that's going to be my time motif, my time progression, shall we say, that's going to give me a little bit of structure. Okay, start here is not the way I'm going to start this description, it's just a reminder to me about where the first line comes on the screen. Okay, so after all that, how are we going to start? So, I am going to start with a detail. And we are looking at a picture. So the obvious kind of detail to start with would be a detail of something that you see. And if something is obvious and you want to stand out from the pile of all the other exam scripts that are going to be marked, then you would be wise to do something a little bit less obvious. I do not mean make things complicated. That is a bad idea. I mean something that's still simple, but just a little bit less obvious. Use the 5 senses. This is a photo. The most obvious sense is sight. Half the exam papers in that pile will include people who have just written about what they can see. So as soon as you're using some other senses, you are immediately going to be doing something that makes you stand out. If you start with it, impress the examiner, okay? We want to write well, but we do also bear in mind that we are trying to perform well in an exam. That does matter. That is ultimately kind of what this is about, sadly. So what can we do? So brainstorming. I mean, this sloth, it's leaning back against this trunk. It looks like it's relaxing, it's stretching out. And you can see that this is kind of slightly flaky looking bark. What's going to happen as it leans against it? It leans against it. It's going to make a kind of crackling, crunchy noise, I think, in my opinion. My not so humble opinion, because I am the god narrator, so there's nothing very humble about that. It leans back and crunches against that bark. So let's start with that sound. Okay. The bark crackles and scrunches. Right, now I have a computer so I can easily edit as I go. We don't need the, do we? The is a boring, it's a boring word to start with. That with bark crackles and scrunches. Okay, why have I got both those words? Well, because I think they're slightly different sounds. The crack is like as it first puts pressure, and then the scrunch is a kind of, I can't make a, I've got some paper. Okay, here I'm going to destroy all my to-do lists. So that's the kind of scrunchy sounds, okay? I hope that came through. I hope that wasn't for today's to-do list. Nah, it's from a couple of days ago. I've done most of that stuff, or is it going to happen anyway? Okay, so the scrunchy sounds, we're really going to the detail of the sound. Bark crackles and scrunches against its back as it as it leans into the trunk. We could say, now I'm in the luxurious position, I'm typing because I want you to be able to read it, whereas, as you know, if I was writing by a tablet, you'd struggle. That I can make edits as I go. I know in an exam you have to have these thoughts before you write because it's much harder to edit, but, you know, I can make edits, so I'm going to. So it leans into the trunk is fine, okay? That's fine as a complete sentence. But can we be more interesting? As it drives its spine, as it grinds its spine into the trunk. Yeah, that really, it's that really feeling of grinding itself in. So as it grinds its spine into the trunk. Okay, that could sound a little bit, I've got a double space there, that's why it's underlining. Thank you, Word. So that's that kind of satisfaction of grinding in the sounds it makes. Okay, a little aside lesson here. As you're writing, you should be looking out for likely spelling mistakes, things that you're likely to get wrong. And if you're anything like most 11 plus students, a word that you're very likely to get wrong is this one, it's, okay? Just remember, really important to learn, that It is, whereas it, which I've used here, means belonging to it. Okay, so it's the spine that belongs to it, so we have no apostrophe. Just bear that in mind. Okay, what's going on in the comments? Quick look. Nadia B, my eyes were half closed and I could only see the black of the tempestuous rainstorm. Lovely. Did you know that tempestuous means stormy? So you've actually said of the stormy storm. So you only need to say, I could only see the black of the tempest. And then you've used a fantastic word and really conveyed all the same meaning. SKG, can you give the sloth a name? You could give the sloth a name, but then you are doing one of two things. You're either anthropomorphizing it, okay, do you know that word? It means giving a human shape, literally. So you're making it into a person, because this sloth in the wild would not have a name, it's just a sloth, okay? I doubt they give each other names. Its name certainly wouldn't be Barney, okay? Or you're saying it's a sloth in a zoo, in which case it might be given a name, which is also possible. But if, as I'm going with, this is a sloth in the wild, it wouldn't have a name, so giving it a name is kind of weird, it's a bit Disneyfied, and it suggests you're not taking the past so seriously. So I would be very cautious about things like giving the sloth a name for an exam task. Ari Jalil really wants a shout-out. A shout-out. This is your shout-out. And welcome. I haven't seen your name in the comments before. It's fantastic to have you. Out of interest, is anyone here because they saw the ads that I was running on Facebook this week? A bit of an experiment. I put like these ads, sharing the video list, showing the worksheet to see whether people would see them and want to come and join the lesson. If you're one of those people, please let me know, because I'd really like to know whether that worked, or whether it was a complete waste of time. Okay, anyway. Okay, Gemma, you too can have a shout-out. Gemma Reed. Right, enough shout-outs for now. Let's get back to the story, because I don't want to spend forever on this. As it grinds its spine into the trunk. And now, because we're God as a narrator, we can also imagine what it feels. So let's go with it. There's actual feelings. It grinds its spine into the trunk. The feeling... Okay. Now... You could go, it feels like something, but sometimes simplicity is nice. Sometimes sort of take the Hemingway line. The feeling is good. That's very much the kind of thing that Hemingway would have written. The feeling is good, and it contracts its eyes involuntarily. Okay, so I'm using some good language here, but I'm not trying to be fancy. I mean, if I said, if it closes its eyes, that's not what I mean, because it doesn't close, it contracts it, kind of narrows them. You could say narrows, but if you say someone narrows their eyes, we normally mean that they're being kind of sort of skeptical or something, okay? So that isn't what we're after. We don't want them narrowing its eyes, it contracts its eyes, without really trying to. Why not say involuntarily, which does the same job more briefly? So I'm not trying to be fancy, I'm just trying to use the right word. The feeling is good. Yeah. Okay, and it contracts its eyes involuntarily. And sometimes a simple word like good is good, because pleasure can be a simple thing, and sometimes a simple language goes with that. In my opinion, you don't always need to complicate things. The contracting its eyes, by the way, so look at the picture. I'm pulling out a detail from the picture to show that I'm studying it closely. Right. But, as I hope I'm going to show with this, you don't need to use everything from the picture at once. I'm saving the wetness for a bit later when the rain comes down. And it contracts its eyes involuntarily. Right. So, yeah. Now, I would love to move on to another sense and really build up this picture. It's rubbing itself against the trunk. Afua Ozay, I can't give you a shout out, so I'm sorry, because I've given shout outs to too many people. Right. So, feeling's good and it contracts. Yes, if it's blurry, you need to go to the cog in the bottom corner and increase the quality, because that's going to be what your problem is. Virtually, certainly, I would say. You're probably looking at it on low quality, so everything's a bit fuzzy. This can be high definition sharp if you have it set up right. Okay, anyway, where were we? Yeah, so I'd love to... what's going to happen? Let's think about it. As it rubs its fur, imagine you're really close in there, And what's going to happen? Look at this thing. Apart from getting rain on a bit, when do you think this creature last washed? Look at the greenness round its head. That isn't going to be its natural colour. This is a bit of a stinky creature. So it's rubbing against the trunk, and I think smell is going to come off. So let's describe its smell. How can we link that? So we're clearly linking it. Well, because we have in our mind it's rubbing itself, a smell is going to come off. So, simple connection. As it rubs, why is it highlighting good? What does it think is wrong with that? The feeling is good, and you don't need a comma after that. Go away, Microsoft Word. That's nonsense. You could have a comma, but there's no reason for one. You don't need it. As it rubs, right, what kind of smell is going to come off this creature? So I think it's going to be a kind of musty smell. Not horrible, but just kind of like sort of old leaves, that kind of thing. Hang on. Why don't we say exactly that? Okay. As it rubs, a musty smell of old leaves. How about old leaf litter? Because that's nice and specific. Leaves lying on the ground, got a bit old, a little bit mouldering, a musty smell of mouldering. Yes, exactly, of mouldering. Leaf litter rises and fills the area. Okay, so you see what's happening here. And what I've got a few notes I took before this so that I wouldn't just run out of ideas while I was live in the lesson, because that wouldn't help anybody. But I haven't written this out in advance. And so this process of kind of coming up with, as it rubs, the musty smell, and the idea of mouldering and so on, these things. These are things coming into my mind as I do this, because I want to show you how you could just come up with little connections, explore the 5 senses, and then things will pop up and you can use them, okay? And you say, how would I explain this to somebody? How would I explain this to Mahatin Talukder in the comments in a simple, straightforward fashion? And then that's what I write. Asi Yiz says, it smells of mouldy bread rotting. Lovely, really good. You could definitely use that. I personally would either say of mouldy bread or rotting bread, because I think by saying both, you're just kind of going over the idea a little bit more than you have to. Oh dear, sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I've still got this cough after, what am I, my 3.5 weeks since I stopped having COVID, something like that. It's ridiculous. No, more than that. It's like, whatever it is. It's ages. I'm trying not to use bad words here. And I've still got coughs coming on when I talk a lot. It's so annoying. Anyway. As it rubs, a musty smell of mouldering leaf litter rises and fills the area. Fills the area, that's a bit boring. How about rises and spreads? That's all we need to say. I mean, what is the area? It's not clear anyway. Let's not use words for the sake of them. When you've got words that don't need to be there, cross them out, or in my case, delete them. Right, so we've got the smell coming up. Okay. Yeah, okay. Now let's go back to this thing, because at the moment it's grinding, it rubs, its smell rises. Okay, what does it do next? So as it pushes up the trunk, well, you can see, let's look at its limbs here. Oops, no, you don't see me, you want to see that. So you can see it's kind of really stretched out. That's its leg, but it's my arm doing the job. Ugh, I can't put arms into the picture. So it's kind of taut, tense. So let's try and convey that body shape as we describe it now. It must smell of mouldering leaf litter, rises and spreads. Okay. It draws its body tight. Draws its body tight. Now that one thing I really like about that arm there, the one that's behind, is how much it just looks like a kind of tube. Really straight, really round, sort of tapering. It doesn't really look like a limb on an animal. And so what's that like? What comes to mind for me, it's like a draft excluder. You know, those kind of long fabric tubes that you might put on the front of the bottom of a door in a sort of poorly ventilated house to stop the wind coming in. So it draws its body tight, its arms chubby like draft excluders. Okay, simile, and I think quite a creative simile, if I dare say so myself. In other words, not the kind of simile that you see all the time. You don't want to be someone who writes about things, I don't know, he was as quick as a cheetah, and so on, all that kind of thing all the time. No, you want to come up with images that actually are not so obvious, so they make the reader actually bother to imagine the thing and think about it. Draws its body tight, its arms chubby, and straight like draft excluders. Oops, sorry, I don't want to scroll down yet. There we are. Its arms chubby and straight like draft excluders. And what other detail can we fit into this sentence about its body's appearance? So, if you pull your body tight, you would probably expect your body to kind of stretch out, and probably, you become reasonably kind of flat. Does that happen to this sloth? No. Look at that belly. It's lying on its back, and you can still see its belly is bulging up a bit. How nice and contented to be a sloth after a full meal. So I think that'd be a nice thing to fit in here. Its arms chubby and straight like draft excluders. Its belly bulging. Now, I've used some quite common words like chubby, straight. Let's stick with that. So I could say it's belly bulging as though in satisfaction. That's a bit pretentious. It's belly bulging happily. Now, what have I done there? Now, this is a living creature, but its belly is not a person in its own right. But I've described the belly as though it is, as though it can be happy. So I have personified the belly, even though it belongs to a kind of a person in this story, in this description. And I think that adds a little bit of interest, and it gives the idea that not only is the sloth happy, but every part of this sloth is happy. It's a picture of contentment in my imagination. I'm not saying sloths are always happy, but I'm imagining that this one makes me imagine it being happy. Yatharth has written, well, to everyone writing example descriptions in the comments. I can't get to all of them, but so what have you written? The thin bark scraped the sloth's hairy skin, scratching as it did so. Clinging to a thin branch, he stares, thin and thin, try not to repeat yourself, he stares into the horizon and rested on the turquoise leaves. I know that you're writing live comments, so mistakes will happen. Just be careful. He stares into the horizon and rested on the turquoise leaves. Such a common mistake in People's 11 Plus writing. You've mixed two different tenses. Stares is present tense, it's happening now, that's fine. Rested is past tense, as you're describing something that happened then. That is also fine. They cannot be in the same sentence because these things cannot be happening both now and in the past. That is not possible, okay? So be careful. Consistent tenses, please. But very nice descriptions. And I like the way you got it staring kind of longingly at the horizon. I can really see that in the sloth's face. That's a nice use of detail. Nadia, he rubbed his damp, mud-brown fur against the speckled, splintered bark. He indulged in the feeling because he hadn't scratched in ages. I really like this. I love speckled, splintered bark. That's a lovely kind of mouth sound. It goes with the sound of the bark splintering, actually. And in that sound, you link an appearance, speckled, with something that's kind of a sound, splintered. So it's really nice linking. Mud brown fur, lovely. Hyphenate that. Mud brown, it's one idea. It's a compound adjective. Lovely. Beautiful stuff. One last one from MXH. Interesting scream name. The branch crunches as the aroma of the rain washed the rain washed, careful, that's one compound adjective again, as the aroma of the rain washed fur floats into the air. His long arms cling onto the moss encrusted branch. Best one yet, absolutely fantastic. The branch crunches as the aroma of rain washed fur floats into the air. His long arms cling onto the moss encrusted branch. Lovely. Brilliant, especially the first sentence there. I love that. The aroma of rain-washed fur. Awesome. Fantastic writing. Well done. I love it. Okay, enough of those. I've got to get on with this, so we're going to be here all day. Okay, it's belly bulging happily. Okay. What can we do now? So this is. It said like 1 to 2 paragraphs, so I'm a little bit constrained. I think the task was quite specific, wasn't it? Yeah, 1 or 2 paragraphs. So I can't keep starting new paragraphs even though I might like to, so I have to keep linking ideas. Is belly bulging bulging happily. Okay, let's bring some more things out of this picture. So we've got those branches in front of it. It looks like a sort of spindly little bush. Now, I could just describe, I could say there is a bush in front of it. But again, I want to link ideas. So let's have a bit of new action. Let's have a bird that drops down into those leaves. Now, that is not in the picture. So how can I keep it relevant? I'm going to keep it relevant because this bird is going to be all lively and busy, and that is going to contrast with how still and not busy the sloth is, okay? But I have to deal with this briefly and not get sidetracked by the bird, okay? And I have to keep making it relevant to the sloth, okay? All those things that I need to think about as I do this. So, this belly bulging happily. Okay, so let's link it by carrying on the same sentence. It's belly bulging happily, barely aware of the urgent little bird. Okay, so urgent can mean you have to do it now, but it can also be an adjective that describes kind of busy, kind of frantic. An urgent person is always kind of, I need to do this, I need to do that, but they have a really urgent manner. So an urgent little bird, barely aware of the urgent little bird that okay, let's make this bird seem a bit silly. We're on the sloth side here. Slow and steady is wise. So this urgent little bird, let's not have it soaring down. Let's let it plops down. That makes it sound as ridiculous as can be. That plops down into the spindly leaves of a nearby bush. Barely aware of the urgent little bird that plops down into the spindly leaves of a nearby bush. Okay. By the way, just a little grammatical note, something that's very, very trivial. This word that I've used here, okay? People tend to use that and which interchangeably as though you could use one or the other. And I even used to do this, actually. But there is actually a difference, I'll very briefly point out. If the thing after the that is essential to what you're saying. So it is not barely aware of the little bird. That could be any bird. It is barely aware of this particular bird. Which bird? The bird that plops down into the bush, okay? So the thing after that is really important. Without that, you would not know which bird this is. On the other hand, you might say, look at the bird which I also saw yesterday, okay? So here, the main thing is look at the bird. And then you've got some added information, which I also saw yesterday. So if you're adding on information and it comes after a comma, then you use the word which. Whereas if the information is crucial, so if I said, look at the bird that I saw yesterday, how is that different? Well, I'm saying, look at that bird, not that bird. Look at the bird that I saw yesterday, not the bird that we looked at last week. So in this case, the word that is used because we're talking about this particular one. So this is a really tiny detail in English. And by the way, there's no comma before it. This is a really tiny detail in English, but it's just one of these little things that if you know it, you'll really impress people who also know these little rules. Rules is a difficult word when we're talking about language, especially English, but we'll call it that for now. Belly plops down the spindly leaves of a nearby bush. So we're talking about this particular bird, not another one. Plops down, okay, nearby bush. I could say it attempts, let's have this bird try to settle in the bush, fail, because look at this bush, look how spindly and flimsy and useless it is. Fail, and then carry on and disappear out of sight. Let's go with that. So it attempts, by the way, there's a problem with what I'm doing here. See whether you can spot what the problem is before I do. Okay, there's something wrong that I'm doing now. I'm making a mistake on purpose. Can you spot what it is? It attempts to settle, attempts to settle, loses its footing, and we could dramatically say, and plunges out of sight, or plunges to the forest floor, But again, let's just make it seem ridiculous as it barely even matters to this sloth that's just lying there going, how stupid people are, how stupid birds are, why can't they just be like me? Attempts to settle, loses its footing, and vanishes from sight. And that's it. Okay. But what is the problem? The problem is this. Ladies and gentlemen, beware of pronouns, okay? They are dangerous. It could refer to the bird, but let's look at the previous sentence. It, the sloth, draws its, the sloth's, body tight. Its, the sloth's, arms chubby and straight like draft excluders. Its, the sloth's, belly bulging happily. Very aware of the urgent little bird that spots down to the spindly leaves of a nearby bush. Folks, it has been meaning the sloth for the entirety of the last sentence. So now when I say it attempts to settle, what do you think the reader is going to think I'm talking about? Are they going to think I'm talking about the bird, or are they going to think I'm talking about the thing that I've been calling it for ages? In other words, a sloth. Of course they're going to think it's a sloth. Okay? So it looks like I'm saying the sloth attempts to settle and then falls out of the tree, which is not at all what I'm trying to say. This is a mistake that so many people make in their writing that I have to look at. Do not make it. So I could say, and indeed it would be much better if I said, the bird, I'm stopping being bold again, the bird attempts to settle, but then I've got the bird, I've got little bird, the bird. Now, long sentences are rarely a good thing. Normally when you've got a very long sentence, that's a sign that you should have chopped it up for easier reading in order to better communicate your ideas. In this case, I like the way that it's lying there with its bulging belly and all kind of at the same moment the bird goes donk, all at the same time. And it's kind of ridiculous. So I think this really works if I make it into one sentence. Into the spindly leaves of a nearby that plops down to the spindly leaves of a nearby bush, attempts to settle, loses its footing, and vanishes from sight. What, that just happened? Yeah, it did. All like that without even starting a new sentence. And for me, that works. I think that's the effect that I'm looking for as a writer. And that's what works means. There are an infinite number of ways you could do this, but I, the writer, feel that making that part of the same sentence achieves the same effect. What other things have I done here? So the sloth gets kind of longer, slower phrases. It draws its body tight, its arms chubby and straight like draft excluded. You say that and it's quite a long, reasonably long idea drawn out between commas. Barely aware of the urgent little bird that plops down little short words into the spindly leaves of a nearby bush. Attempts to settle, loses its footing and vanishes from sight. So lots of little bits between commas, lots of fiddly little words describing this fiddly little bird that comes down. So lots of thought behind this, even though it's quite simple. I know I'm taking a bit of a while over this, but I hope that when you've watched this and gone through this, you'll have a really good idea of how to do really well in a similar exam question. And this is such a common exam task, describing based on a picture. So many 11 plus tests have this. People have asked me to do a video on this so many times. Here it is. So I'm giving it a bit of time to try and teach you as much as possible. By the way, if it's useful, if you're learning from it, yes, please tell your friends, drag them along to these lessons. But also, why have you not subscribed to my channel yet? If you haven't, please do. There is no downside. But it tells YouTube that you like my videos, and so YouTube shows them to more people, and that makes me happy. Thank you. Subomi says, Robert Stupendous Lomax, what can we say about taste? Anything you like. If you're sort of godlike narrator, you can tell me what it's tasting and what things taste like. If you're being someone watching who's not godlike, you can have them imagining what the sloth might be tasting. I can almost imagine the taste of blah 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 as each one of the leaves. But you don't have to include taste. I'm certainly not saying the 5 senses, they are not a checklist, okay? You should not go into a story thinking, I must talk about all 5 senses. That's a bad approach because it'll be artificial and it would seem weird. The point is, there are a list of options for you to choose from so you don't just get stuck on what things look and maybe what they sound like, okay? That's the point. I don't think I'm going to cover any taste in this. That's okay. Maybe I will. Who knows? Right, I said we'd have some progression. So now we're going to have a bit of a change, okay? I'm going to start a new paragraph. And vanishes from sight. So let's have, what would happen when the rain comes? You'd hear it first of all, and the sound of it would get rid of the sounds of the sloth. They kind of vanish into the general background noise. Imagine rain hammering on rainforest leaves, loud, okay? So let's remind the reader of the sound of the sloth so they've got a bit of perspective on that. the sloth eases forwards. The sloth relaxes. Yeah. Relaxes its pose, and a what of crunches, and a fresh sally of pops and crunches, and a fresh sally of pops and crunches. Okay, I don't know what we're going to say about this, so how about just with a fresh sally? Relaxes its pose with a fresh sally of pops and crunches. Okay. I'm going to be a little bit fancy. I want to say of the bark, but if I want to say of the tree, there's an adjective meaning to do with trees, of arboreal. How about that? Of arboreal pops and crunches. A fresh sally of pops. Let's imagine the pops might be the sloth, that might be its back. So pops and arboreal crunches. Okay, let's be really specific here. Ooh. Rax pose a fresh sally of pops and arboreal crunches. Okay, and now I'm going to start a sentence with and, because I want to create a sense of urgency. Don't start sentences with and unless you have a good reason to. I think I do here. And then the crunching grows louder, and then the crunching grows louder, becomes a resonant din. Why resonant? Because it echoes. Resonance is echo. The resonance of a guitar is echo inside it. Becomes a resonant din. The crunching grows louder, becomes a resonant din, and eclipses all else as raindrops begin to hammer. Rain's always hammering in stories. As raindrops begin to smash against, okay, so they're trying to break in against the forest canopy. What's the canopy? It's the layer of leaves created by all these tall trees up on top, which block out lots of light and keep block a lot of raindrops. In fact, rainforests have multiple canopies by and large, different layers of growth. Anyway, but we'll just keep it simple. Begin to smash against the forest canopy, and eclipses all else. Okay, so you know what eclipse is? It's when the moon blocks out the light of the sun, or when the earth blocks the light of the sun from going against the moon is the most common situation, actually. A lunar eclipse. So eclipse all else as raindrops begin to smash. And the solar eclipse when the moon comes between the sun and the earth. Anyway, so eclipse is like covering something up. So here the sound of the rain on the canopy covers the sounds of the sloth crunching. Sloth relaxes its pose with a fresh sally of pops and arboreal crunches, and then the crunching grows louder, becomes a resonant din, and eclipses all else as raindrops begin to smash against the forest canopy. I think that's quite a bit of drama in there, and we're really working the sounds hard. So sound is a bit of a theme going through this. We've done more with sounds than with appearances, I think. Let's get back to the sloth. So never run too far from the picture. We are describing the picture. So what does the sloth do in response to this? So the rain hasn't come through yet. It's still on the canopy. The sloth, what does it do? Yeah, maybe it purses its eyes again. We said it contracts its eyes. Let's say now pursing its eyes. Pursing your lips. It's pursing its eyes. The sloth purses, not pursues. Purses its eyes, and what else want it to do? Let's have it really, really, really not caring about this rain. Purses its eyes and yawns complacently. Okay, complacently, literally with pleasure, but really it used to mean just not caring about what's happening. If someone's complacent about something, it means they're just not bothered. So it's not bothered about the person is happy and not bothered. Yawns complacently. Purses its eyes and yawns complacently. Okay, now the rain's come through, so water begins to, what's the water going to do? Let's go back to this sloth. So we can see its body, that its fur's got kind of matted into these kind of strings, these cords of wetness, these wet cords. So let's, oh, that's the one. So water begins, what's it going to do? And yawns complacently as, so let's really contrast its complacency, it's not minding, with what for us would be very uncomfortable wetness, as water begins to, it could begin to mat its fur into little cords, as I said, or how about, let's make a verb, as water begins to cord its fur, okay? Completely clear to the reader what we're talking about. You know what a cord is, a string, so if you say it cords its fur, we can all work out what I'm saying, even though I'm being a little bit creative with language. Purses its eyes and yawns complacently as water begins to cord its fur. Oh, hang on. Be very wary of repeated words. So I've got begins to cord its fur, and then the previous line I had begin to smash. So, starts. Okay, it's a bit ugly when you repeat a word. The reader notices it. It sort of just comes across as a bit sloppy and unpoetic. Don't be sloppy and unpoetic. I know you're all wonderful poets. The sloth purses its eyes and yawns complacently as water starts to cord its fur. Cord its fur, slipping away. Starts to cord its fur, then slips away faster and faster. And the whole point is that this sloth, its fur, it's kind of waxy, you know, sort of sweaty, and the water just goes dum dum dum, disappears away, and the slips away faster and faster, unable to settle, and slips away faster and faster, unable to settle. Yeah. That's fine. Okay. Now let's really work this. So the rain is going to get harder and harder. We had the rain, what was it doing before? It was smashing before. So let's stick with that ash, but let's go with bash. So the rain bashes, what's it telling me now? It says slips away. No, it's complete nonsense. Sometimes Word just talks complete nonsense about grammar and style. The rain bashes away, rain bashes away frantically. The rain bashes away frantically. How about evermore? I'm nearly finished, by the way, folks, because we have to write 1 or 2 paragraphs. It's a 15 minutes or so job, isn't it? So you wouldn't write very much more than this. The rain bashes away evermore frantically. Okay. The rain bashes away. I'm going to come back to this punctuation, by the way. The rain bashes away evermore frantically. The what's the sloth going to do? It's going to fully close its eyes. Why not? It's been kind of pursing its eyes, contracting its eyes. Let's have it really close its eyes. Let's have it go to sleep. The rain bashes away evermore frantically. The sloth closes its eyes. Now, why have I not said the sloth, I don't know, draws its eyelids closed? Because I want to show how much it doesn't care by just using the simple, most ordinary language, as though this enormously powerful rainfall is, for this sloth, the most normal thing in the world, which it probably is. The rain bashes away more frantically, the sloth closes its eyes. Now, I am a big fan of simple punctuation, as anyone who watches my channel knows, and I think you should avoid fancy punctuation unless there's a really good reason for it. Fancy punctuation is things like semicolons. This is a really good place for a semicolon, because what I'm doing here, I'm kind of leaning two ideas against each other, two contrasting ideas. The rain bashes away ever more frantically. The sloth closes its eyes. Okay, these things are kind of opposites, but they're connected opposites. I want to show that connection, that these are connected by being different responses to the same situation. And that's what semicolon does. It kind of leans the ideas together. How would you say this? Well, let's imagine it was a full stop. Okay, so let's put the full stop back in, but not the capital letter because I'm lazy. Let's say it aloud. The rain bashes away ever more frantically. The sloth closes its eyes. They're separate. Now semicolon. The rain bashes away ever more frantically. The sloth closes its eyes. The semicolon for me gives a kind of up and then a kind of down from the semicolon again, showing the kind of leaning. The tone of a sentence is almost like this, goes up and down. So it's very effective in that way, and this is a good place for a semicolon. The sloth closes its eyes. Now, do we need a closing sentence? Well, I've written, according to Microsoft Word, 154 words. I said use about half to 2/3 of the answer space. That's about right for that. About half to 2/3 of a page, 150 words, 150, 160 words, about right. This is good. And how's this for an ending? The rain bashes away ever more frantically. The sloth closes its eyes. And that's a really nice way to end, as the sloth closes its eyes and probably drops off. Let's read through this together quickly. I'm going to read it out loud. I have a slurp of my tea. It's gone a little bit cold, but never mind. Tetley's. Actually, it's not Tetley's. What is it? It's Twinings, I think. Posh tea. It's Twinings. It's Twinings Lady Grey. How posh is that? You get sophistication in this channel. Right, let's read this aloud. Okay. So, and by the way, I'm sorry to everybody that I haven't looked at all your suggestions for a while. It's because I've realised it's taken so long. Right, let's read this out loud. Bark crackles and scrunches against its back as it grinds its spine into the trunk. The feeling is good, and it contracts its eyes involuntarily. As it rubs, a musty smell of mouldering leaf litter rises and spreads. It draws its body tight, its arms chubby and straight like draft excluders, its belly bulging happily. Barely aware of the urgent little bird that plops down into the spindly leaves of a nearby bush, attempts to settle, loses its footing, and vanishes from sight. The sloth relaxes its pose with a fresh sally of pops and arboreal crunches. And then the crunching grows louder, becomes a resonant din, and eclipses all else as raindrops begin to smash against the forest canopy. The sloth purses its eyes and yawns complacently as water starts to cord its fur, then slips away faster and faster, unable to settle. The rain bashes away ever more frantically. The sloth closes its eyes. And there we have it, okay? A nice little bit of writing. It's not the highest literature. It's not the best thing I've ever written. I'm sure you will write many better things. But it's a good exam response to this task. And it does everything you could want from this. I'm not going to recap all the ways it does the stuff I said at the beginning because we want to get on with this. We want to draw this to a close. Let's very quickly take a moment for a... Yep, it is time for the tip of the week. And we'll have a nice, simple tip here, which is very relevant, and it's this. You'll be really tempted. Let's say you have an exam coming up where you have to write a story, you get 40 minutes, you've got to write about a page and a quarter, okay? Standard kind of 11 plus exam. Nonetheless, do lots of practice on tasks like this. Short, descriptive tasks where you just do one thing and try and, like working on a little jewel, just trying to make it beautiful and perfect in a small way. There's loads of practice for that actually in my RSL creative writing books are full of that kind of thing, full of tasks like this. Look, I know I'm selling my own stuff, sorry, many apologies, but I really do recommend that you have a look at the RSL creative writing series because I mean, they're the main way that I use to teach these skills, okay? But yeah, work on short tasks to refine your skills. That's my main tip of the week this time. Are there any just quickly, are there any questions coming in? Oh, by the way, while I'm waiting for any questions to come in, one thing I should say, a new thing that I'm doing now is, I don't know if you know that through my 11 Plus Lifeline service, there's an option to send me work that I mark and send back. And yes, I do actually do it myself. I don't have a team of minions doing marking. One new thing I'm now doing is I'm giving voice comments. So what you get back, you send me your work, your story or your comprehension or whatever, and I go through it. I have my microphone. Oops, I just detached my microphone. It's a disaster, but the light's still on. I think you can still hear me. I'm destroying my desk and my streaming setup and everything. Oh, well, never mind. Bang, crash. Anyway, without breaking my microphone, I go through and I click on your work, just at the point where there's something I want to comment on, then I record a little voice message, and then I go to the next bit and so on, and then you go through and you click on each thing and you listen to my voice message in which I say, you've actually spelt this word wrong because there are 3 ways of spelling it and here they are, and this is why you choose this one. Or I say, why have you done this in your plot? Could you have done this other thing to bring out the character a little bit more, and so on. So that's a way in which I'm providing some really detailed feedback on people's writing that I hope helps. So yeah, if you're interested in me giving you spoken feedback like this on your writing, can you think of anything worse? I don't know. Probably avoid it like the plague. But if you don't want to avoid it, have a look at 11 Plus Lifeline, because that's something that I do. If you're already an 11 Plus Lifeline member, think about upgrading so you can get that service. Right. Okay, questions. Someone says, Robert, what books do you recommend for vocab? I'm really poor in vocab. Any books that you are interested in, because any book that you read, if your vocab is poor, and to be honest, even if it's good, will contain good words that you either don't know or that you don't think to use. So there's a difference between reading a book passively and going blah, 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 and reading a book actively and thinking, that is a good word. I'm going to take a moment and write it down. By the time you've read through that book, you might have a decent list of words that you'd like to use in your writing that you've written down. And now you've got a list, so you can use that when you write and get used to using those words. And voila, like magic, you have improved your vocabulary. Okay? So every book is a vocabulary book. Every book. Even something pretty simple. Yes, there are great vocabulary books out there like Sheena Eggers, Carol DeQuest books and blah blah that people like for 11 plus, and that's great. But also, don't just think that is a vocabulary book, I need to learn vocab. Every book you read is a vocabulary book if you use it intelligently. Do you recommend to take mock exams, and if so, how many? They can certainly be useful, but only take good ones that are realistic, that set good feedback. Lots of them are not very good. I don't know which are the best. It's not something I study, but I do know there's a big difference. So look for recommendations and choose ones that are good. How many? I mean, for most people, I think one mock exam is probably fine, because you can do some mock practice at home anyway. But I mean, if you mean going out to a formal mock where you sit in an exam hall and pretend it's an exam, probably one is going to be enough for most people. But if more are useful, then do more. You know, it depends. What other questions do you have? Sorry, I'm not going to answer too many because this has been a long lesson. You improve your vocab. I've spoken about that a lot in other videos, so I'll skip that for now. What's the next lesson? The next lesson is going to be a maths lesson on 3D shapes, problems to do with three-dimensional shapes. Azzy says, how do we show you our writing? If you're an 11 Plus Lifeline member, then you'll find out all about it. Have a look at the 11 Plus Lifeline page and you'll learn about it there. If you mean you want to show me some of your writing for this task today, then write your answer and stick it in the comments. Not the live comments here, the proper comments under the video. And I'll have a look and give you a little bit of feedback. I'd love to see your answers to either the whole of this question or just to bits of this question. Can you creative writing on instructions next week? I've already done a video on creative writing on instructions, I'm pretty certain. Let me have a quick look at my channel. You know what, I've been doing this for so long that I actually lose track of which topics I've covered. So let me try and pull up the Easy 11 Plus channel. Nah, it's going to take too long. I'm almost certain I've done a video on writing instructions. Have a look at the creative writing playlist on the Easy 11 Plus homepage on YouTube. Someone says, my name is Anna. It's my second lesson. It's wonderful. That's who's lurking behind the MXH screen name. It's your second lesson. Fantastic to have you. It's wonderful you came for a first lesson and then you liked it so much or hated it so little that you came back. Okay. Sorry, I know there are loads of questions here. There were some really good questions too, but I just go to me. What's your favourite subject, says Nadia. I'm going to interpret that as what's my favourite subject to teach in these Easy 11 Plus lessons because that keeps it relevant. I think that Creative writing is kind of my favourite as far as I think I've got the most to contribute here. I think that when I'm doing maths or comprehension, I mean, lots of other people explain maths and comprehension well, and I feel that kind of if it's something I feel that I'm kind of proud of how I do it, it's probably this, the creative writing. What's my favourite to teach in practice? Often, I mean, maths is kind of quite relaxing to teach because you just go through and show the solutions, and I don't have to think too much because I've already solved them and I know how they go, and I can be a little bit lazy. So it depends. For kind of laziness, as a shirker, the maths lessons, as I'm doing something really useful here, the creative writing, like today. Although it does go on a bit, doesn't it? Right, enough. I'm going to finish. I've said enough for today. So it's been fantastic to have you. It's wonderful that you're here. Tell your friends about this channel, subscribe, and come back in the future and see more. I've got a short lesson coming out at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. Miss it, and I can't think of a rhyme. It's bad if you miss it, but except it isn't, because it'll still be there and you can watch it afterwards, so don't worry. But be there. And my next live lesson is at 6 o'clock next Tuesday evening, same time, same place. If you're not watching this live, click next on the video that pops up there, which would be a really good way to develop your creative writing skills. Why would you want to do anything else with your time? It's been fantastic to have you. Thank you for your wonderful comments. As always, so many new people. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have, despite the fact it's been long. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.